The craziest moments in comics sometimes come in the form of our morally just superheroes losing their cool and just showing us how powerful they really are. I think it's a well-known fact that Spider-Man pulls his punches. It's part of the reason he is one of the best heroes, because he does everything he does while also holding back. But I always forget how much he actually pulls those punches. For example, in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 270, a black-suited Spider-Man puts one hell of a beating on a former Herald of Galactus, Firelord. Previously, Firelord had been wandering the cosmos when he stopped into New York to enjoy the culture, only to be attacked by firemen, and then kicked in the face by Spider-Man. Now, the Lord of Fire wants his revenge. After leading Firelord on a merry chase through office buildings, Grand Central Station, the subway system, into a construction zone, having a building demolished on top of them, and then leading him to a gas station which then explodes, Spider-Man, at his wit's end, musters all his effort and his spider sense to lay an incredible beatdown of speed, agility, and raw strength on Firelord, getting lost in his bloodlust until Captain America and the Avengers show up to be like, dude, you got him! Chill. Number 9, Firestorm v Parasite. Rudolph Jones found himself exposed to a strange form of radiation which changed him into the bald, green-skinned parasite with the ability to absorb the life energy of others. In Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, issue number 86, Parasite is released from an area he is being held in and goes on a rampage, draining multiple people of their life energy, including Firehawk, who fell pretty easily to this villain. Luckily, the hero Firestorm is nearby. Now at this point in time, Firestorm has become the world's fire elemental, and received a pretty significant power boost. Almost as if to prove that fact, Firestorm comes in hot on Parasite with a blast of flame, and then when Parasite tries to drain Firestorm's power, the hero is unaffected as he says, "My powers come not from myself, but from the earth. I don't have power, I am power." And in a last-ditch effort, Parasite decides to try and trade Energy Blast with Firestorm. Unfortunately for Parasite, it is nowhere near an equal fight. He uses up all the energy he took from Firestorm, and then just trying to hold back Firestorm's blast, Parasite goes through his own reserved life energy until he is on the brink. Realizing he will lose, he begs Firestorm to stop, saying that Firestorm would bring the end for Parasite, to which Firestorm simply says, "That was my intention." Luckily for him, Parasite was saved by the allies of Firestorm, who told him to just stop, but this hero left Parasite emaciated from using up his own energy. Number 8, Batman vs. Thugs. Have you ever played the Batman Arkham games? The combat in those games is absolutely fantastic, but it still leaves me wondering how many of these random street thugs actually survive after their interaction with Batman. He hits hard, and he is pretty unforgiving about it, which serves his whole point of instilling fear. But I think because these nameless thugs are cannon fodder, they essentially get the worst beatings of most of Batman's villains, and we never hear from most of them again. That kind of tells you all you need to know. Now, as an example, let's talk about a group of thugs in the All-Star Batman and Robin series, issue 7. Now, this comic is written by Frank Miller, who seems to be able to get away with making Batman do pretty much anything. Like in the opening pages of the issue, Batman comes speeding into a group of armed thugs, foot first, maniacally laughing like the Joker, talking in his head about how Gotham is full of cockroaches. He relishes the fact that criminals are scared that they are disposing of each other accidentally. Then he sets fire to a bottle of bleach and tosses it onto the criminals, blanketing them in fire. And then he continues beating the snot out of them while they're on fire. And then what happens next? I don't really know how to explain this, but Black Canary pops up out of nowhere and these two superheroes just start making out and getting busy while the thugs are barbecuing in the background. Unfortunately, yes, this is Batman, and it's scary. Number 7, Zombie Peter Parker. In Marvel Zombies number 2, Zombie Peter Parker and Luke Cage leave the group of cosmically superpowered zombies and, regaining their good guy nature, try to protect what's left of humanity on Earth. But they unfortunately get teleported to a different reality by Malcolm Cortez's son. In Marvel Zombies Returns, the zombie heroes end up on Earth 91126. Zombie Spider-Man thinks he can cure their zombie virus by finding the Lifeline tablet, but just as he is getting underway with the plan, he gets distracted and forced into a fight with Dr. Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, Vulture, Kraven, and Sandman, aka the Sinister Six. Despite trying his best to hold back his hunger, Spider-Man cannot resist Kraven's smell and ends up attacking him, biting into his neck. Mysterio tries using illusions, but Spider-Man's senses help him locate and dispose of Mysterio. Electro and Dr. Dr. Octopus try to attack Spider-Man together, but this just puts them in positions to hurt each other instead, with Electro using up most of his power, and Dr. Octopus left electrically deep-fried for Spider-Man to eat. As they realize this is not going too well, the remaining villains try to hightail it out of there, but before Vulture can escape, Spider-Man rips off his wings and uses them to finish off Electro before he can shoot more electricity at him. Only Sandman manages to escape from the chaos, going to attack this universe's Spider-Man for this utterly sickening display of violence. Number 6, Wally West v. Inertia. Inertia was a young villainous Thaddeus Thawne. Inertia is to Bart Allen, aka Impulse, what Eobard Thawne is to Barry Allen. He is his reverse. Now, Inertia had been raised his whole life to absolutely despise speedsters of any kind. He learned to be a villain from others, but his actions were all his own. So, when Inertia made the mistake of taking the life of his opposite, Bart Allen, he would be made to suffer the consequences. Unfortunately for him, those consequences came in the form of Wally West, one of the most powerful speedsters ever. After taunting Wally about the fact that he just took the life of his sidekick, in All Flash #1, Wally takes the young villain, who had the potential to be reformed, and removes his ability to move at all. He traps Inertia in a museum as one of the exhibits, only able to blink once every 100 years. And he leaves the kid there still thinking in real time during all of this, meaning he's driven slowly and very assuredly insane. And just as the cherry on top, Wally left him facing the exhibit of Bart Allen, the man that Inertia could have been. It's an incredibly dark fate for a hero to impose on a villain, especially one who's like a sidekick. Number 5, Midnighter vs. Commander. The Authority is a really cool group from DC Comics' Wildstorm universe. The two most well-known heroes from the team would be Apollo and Midnighter, who are basically like Superman and Batman respectively, only these two are husband and husband, and Midnighter is almost insane. He is like Batman, but like Batman who is also mixed with the Punisher and maybe a little bit of like Deadpool, I think? And these stories get dark. In Mark Millar's run on the Authority, a villain by the name of Commander makes the very big mistake of attacking and forcing himself on Apollo. This was a hell of a mistake. In response to those actions, Apollo, after recovering, burns Commander's legs so that he cannot escape, and Midnighter shows up with a jackhammer, and the rest is something we are kept from seeing, thankfully. If you want to check it out for yourself, you may be my guest, but you've been warned, it's quite haunting. Number 4, Black Panther and the Skrulls. Wakanda, like the other fictional kingdoms of Atlantis and Latveria, is protected by a man who will do pretty much anything to protect his people. T'Challa doesn't really have the luxury of sparing those that would do harm to his incredibly advanced home. But Wakanda is also one of the #1 places targeted when an invading force wants to take over Earth. So, taking those two facts into account, when the Skrulls tried to invade Wakanda to start their mission of dominating the world, T'Challa, the king of one of the most advanced nations in said world, and his wife, Storm of the X-Men, one of the most powerful mutants alive, left those aliens with a clear message. After tricking the Skrulls into attacking their own men for information, the Skrulls send out their best warriors for the task of taking down the pair. But just as those toughest warriors are gone from sight, an army of Wakandan soldiers breaks into the Skrull ship and leaves not a single Skrull soul alive. While that's happening, those toughest warriors are turned into pulp by Black Panther, with T'Challa using their bodily fluids to write, "This is what happens when you invade Wakanda," on the bridge of the Skrull ship. Damn. Number 3, One Rule. Batman Hush could in its entirety be seen as a brutal moment. It strikes at the childhood life of Bruce Wayne himself, pushing Batman to a point we rarely ever see. In Batman issue number 614, right smack dab in the middle of the Hush story arc, Tommy Elliot, the childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, loses his life at what seems to be the hands of the Joker. All the years and years of distress caused by the Joker, the people he hurt, the lives lost, they all fuel this rage inside of Bruce Wayne, who begins to lay a spectacular beatdown on the Joker, knocking out both Harley Quinn and even Catwoman, who both try to stop him. Batman almost goes to the point of permanently bringing an end to the Joker, beginning to put aside his morals to finally be rid of this homicidal plague on Gotham City. It's not until Jim Gordon intervenes while Batman has his gloves around the Joker's neck that the Dark Knight finally relents. The worst part about this, though, is that if Batman did go through with it, the Joker wasn't even the one responsible for the crime in the first place. Number 2, Captain America. We love Civil War. Not the actual Civil War, the Marvel one. So many great examples of superheroes fighting other superheroes, but the main star of the show in this conflict is Iron Man versus Captain America. And while the climactic fight ultimately ended in a Captain America favored draw, I'd say the first major fight was definitely more of a win for Tony Stark. In issue number 3 and 4 of the main Civil War comic, a battle takes place between the forces of both Cap and Stark. While Steve is fighting Spider-Man, Iron Man comes swooping in, attacking with an armor that's analyzed every punch Cap has ever thrown, and he just starts going to town on this guy, feeding him the left right until Cap is absolutely battered. Cap still doesn't go down, so Tony uses a high frequency that shuts down the human brain. He's about to end the fight when Hercules jumps in, attacking with an oil tanker truck, which definitely would do some damage. And finally, in at number 1 today, it's Sentry ripping Ares in half. The Sentry is a character that deserves more spotlight. Problem is, he's kind of one of the most powerful superheroes Marvel has. Obviously, that's debatable, but this guy has the power to destroy pretty much anybody in the Marvel universe. He has reassembled his own molecules and taken out the Molecule Man, for example. He's almost too powerful to include in a lot of stories, but it's the fight between the Sentry and Ares, the literal god of war, in issue 2 of Marvel's Siege event that really left people slack-jawed and looking for emotional support. Ares in this story started on the Dark Avengers before redeeming himself and joining the good guys. He had been showing how awesome he is, and he turns his sights on Norman Osborn, which unfortunately means that Ares now has to face his friend, the Sentry. Sentry punches Ares halfway across Asgard, and maybe 2 or 3 punches later, he grabs both ends of the God of War and rips him completely in half. Not only did it leave everyone on the page frozen, it also left readers completely stunned.
At number 10 is Peter versus Kingpin in Back in Black. The clash between Kingpin illuminated a different facet of the web-slinger's character, notably during the Civil War arc in Marvel Comics. You see, with Aunt May's life hanging in the balance due to Kingpin's orchestration, Peter found himself pushed beyond his usual moral thresholds. Striking a severe blow to the crime lord within the confines of a prison, Peter chose not to extinguish Kingpin's life. Instead, he dealt a far more nuanced form of retribution. During his relentless beating, Peter publicly stripped the Kingpin of his aura of invincibility and dominance. This action, more than physical harm, wounded the villain's pride and ego. It was an exhibition of psychological warfare, revealing that the most impactful defeat can occur within the realms of perception and identity rather than the purely physical. But don't get me wrong, it really got physical. The message conveyed was profound. By choosing not to end Kingpin's life, Spider-Man opted for a fate some might deem more excruciating. The knowledge of being bested in front of his peers, stripping away his veneer of invulnerability. This act underscored the poignant and strategic intellect behind Spider-Man's mask, elevating the battle beyond the realm of physical conflict due to the psychological. At number 9 is Conquest versus Invincible. The showdown between Invincible and Conquest isn't merely a clash of titans. It's a profound exploration of the moral compass and the repercussions of power unshackled. Mark Grayson, aka Invincible, typically represents the epitome of heroism, symbolizing hope and self-sacrifice. However, his confrontation with Conquest uncovers a darker side, questioning the fine line of valor and ruthlessness. On the other end stands Conquest, a paragon of unbridled might, showcasing power devoid of restraint. This clash isn't just a battle of fists, but an introspective journey into the ethical quandaries that arise when power goes unconstrained. Now, what forced Invincible into this frenzy was the fact that Conquest didn't hold back from basically unaliving his girlfriend Adam Eve by sticking his hand through her stomach. So if there's anything that's gonna make Mark Grayson go off the deep end with unadulterated brutality, it's probably that. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is Thor versus Iron Man. The clash between Thor and Iron Man in Thor number 3 wasn't just a showdown of super strength, but a clash of ideologies too. You see, Thor is typically known for his nobility and restraint, but in this instance, he unleashed his full fury against Tony Stark, who had previously created a grotesque clone in Thor's name. It wasn't just about physical combat, it was a statement. Thor's response to Stark's arrogance was immediate and intense, shrugging off repulsor blasts and delivering a relentless lightning strike. What's striking here, pun intended, is Thor's refusal to hold back, a departure from his usual demeanor. With the colossal thunderbolt, he practically fries Iron Man's armor, asserting his divine might over Stark's technology. Holding Tony helpless, he delivers a decisive message about power and bravery, making it clear that he doesn't bend to orders or intimidation. The clash isn't merely a physical battle, but a demonstration of the disparity between godly might and human innovation. It's a powerful moment where Thor sets the record straight and leaves Iron Man to contemplate his actions on a walk of shame in his battered armor. At number 7 is Billy Bishop versus Payback. In The Boys issue number 32, we delve into a brutal showdown between Billy Butcher and the superhero team Payback. The stakes soar as Butcher, leading the boys, finds himself in a perilous situation against these powerful adversaries in a 5-on-1 tussle. But what ensues is a raw display of Butcher's unwavering resolve and resourcefulness. In the heart of the conflict, Butcher orchestrates his defense in a grim and calculated manner. His cutting tactics include using shards of glass as a weapon against Stormfront, exploiting unconventional tools such as a pickaxe and a shovel to incapacitate his foes. The furiosity of his attacks leaves Payback reeling, demonstrating Butcher's unrelenting and unforgiving approach to achieve his objectives. Through the confrontation, Butcher's tenacity is a stark contrast to the superhuman abilities of his adversaries. It's a testament to his resilience and the unyielding determination in the face of overwhelming odds. The clash here culminates with the cliffhanger, leaving the fate of Soldier Boy hanging, while Butcher, true to his namesake, displays an unapologetically intense and dominating exhibition of power. At number 6 is Hyperion. Hyperion's takedown of Galactus in Heroes Reborn number 2 is a significant departure from the standard superhero playbook. See, Hyperion's backstory is crucial here. He's driven by a deep-seated desire for revenge because Galactus, the cosmic devourer, not only destroyed his home planet, but also wiped out his entire family. So when Galactus comes sniffing around Earth looking for his next cosmic meal, Hyperion just isn't having it. He doesn't waste time or energy seeking a non-lethal solution like Superman might. Instead, he acts on his seething anger and immediate need for justice. This move starkly contrasts the moral and ethical approach we typically see from characters based on the likes of Superman. It's a bold illustration of how personal history and motivations can shape a hero's actions in a supercharged moment. This kind of storytelling adds depth and complexity to these larger-than-life characters, painting them in shades of gray rather than simple black and white. At number 5 is Ultimate Captain America versus Giant Man. Every now and then, we get a glimpse of the heroes, the so-called good guys, throwing away the rulebook and going all out. This brings us to a gripping encounter between Ultimate Captain America and Giant Man, a battle that transcends the conventional hero versus villain narrative. The scenario unfolds when Cap, tasked with detaining Hank Pym due to his problematic behavior as a spouse, takes matters into his own hands. Cap doesn't hold back. He initiates the encounter by getting physical with Hank, provoking him to escalate the situation by using his ability to grow to massive proportions. Seemingly leveling the playing field, Hank makes himself massive, thinking it's now a fair fight. However, Cap, being the tactician he is, finds an unexpected advantage in the oversized form of Giant Man, and it's not pretty. With Hank now very vulnerable due to his enlarged size, Cap seizes the opportunity and strikes where it hurts most, delivering a blow to Giant Man's most sensitive area. The skirmish turns brutal. Just when it seems like the conflict is drawing to a close, with Giant Man subdued, the cavalry arrives. Before Cap wraps up, he delivers a final taunting verbal jab, encapsulating the brutal nature of the fight. How big do you feel now? At number 4 is Deadpool versus everybody. In the twisted saga of Deadpool Eliminate the Marvel Universe, Wade Wilson, our favorite merc with the mouth, takes his anti-hero antics to a whole new level. Deadpool, fully conscious of his existence within a comic book, decides to liberate his fellow characters from their fictional suffering by wiping them out of existence. His methods, well, they're a mix of twisted creativity and brutal efficiency. From the Avengers to the formidable Wolverine and even Magneto, Deadpool concocts lethal solutions tailored to each adversary. His arsenal includes ant-sized explosives for the Avengers, a carbonadium blade to counter Wolverine's healing factor, and even an acidic jello cube to take down Magneto. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Now, the culminating takedown was when Professor X attempts to shut down Deadpool's mind, only to suffer a fatal brain hemorrhage, unable to cope with the reality that they're all mere pieces of fiction. And number 3 is X-23. Here we have an intense showdown between X-23 and the notorious Dr. Xander Rice. Picture this, there's an imminent explosion and a choice between personal fulfillment and seeking revenge. X-23 faces a momentous decision as the countdown to the facility's detonation one kicks away. Rice, responsible for inflicting unimaginable torment during Laura's creation, gets the tables turned on him. In a visceral display of completely justified rage, X-23 unleashes a brutal takedown with her iconic adamantium claws, choosing to make every remaining second count. It's a showdown fueled by vengeance and a raw personal vendetta. Despite the temptation to seek revenge, X-23 walks away unscathed as the clock strikes 0. This clash wasn't about physical combat, it's a clash of morality and personal resolution. A display of unyielding strength and determination to move forward, leaving Rice in the wreckage of his own creation. At number 2 is Punisher versus Stiltman. Here we've got the Punisher, a vigilante known for his no-holds-bar approach to taking down the bad guys. So in this particular instance, he's facing off against Stiltman, who, well, he's a bit more on the obscure side of villains, known for, you guessed it, his telescopic legs. Now, the Punisher doesn't mess around. In Punisher War Journal number 1, he decides to make a serious statement by aiming and firing a not-so-light anti-tank weapon straight at Stiltman's groin. Yeah, it's a whole new level of brutal. And despite that explosive hit, only the top half of Stiltman survives, while the rest, well, let's just say it's not feeling too great. But wait, it doesn't end there. Things get even wilder. At Stiltman's farewell gathering, the whole scene takes a turn for the worse, as the Punisher, disguised with a fake mustache, sets off explosives hidden around the place, creating chaos and taking down a whole bar full of liquored up villains. It's not your typical hero move, right? This intense, savage, and, well, pretty brutal if you ask me. And it's just scratching the surface of the sheer madness that went down in that clash. At number 1 is Zeus versus the Hulk. The Hulk is known for his incredible strength, but he decides to take on the Greek pantheon, specifically challenging Zeus. But here's the thing, Zeus is on a whole other level. He's not just a god, he's a heavyweight, and he wastes no time in showing Hulk who's boss. In a thunderous bolt, Zeus smashes the Hulk, shattering his ribcage. The Hulk, resilient as he is no match for Zeus's power. But here's the kicker. Zeus could easily end the Hulk with a snap, yet he chooses not to. Why? Well, I mean, he's got his reasons, declaring that he'll fulfill the Hulk's request to be taken down by a hand for his blasphemy. It's a clash of ideologies as Zeus rejects Hulk's sacrifice plan, stating it as the wrong religion. Zeus leaves Hulk severely injured, sending him flying, teaching him a lesson that'll linger for days. The clash isn't about physical strength, but about conflicting the beliefs and the repercussions of the divine. And the repercussions of challenging the divine. As always, if there's a brutal hero that you think I've missed here today, feel free to let me know down in the comments.
Number 10, Blue Marvel. Marvel has several powerhouse characters who are effectively its answers to Superman, and one of those heroes is Hyperion. Ever since the first incarnation of the character debuted in Avengers number 69, Hyperion has been one of the most powerful figures in the Marvel multiverse in all of his forms. But none of those forms have been as destructive or dangerous as King Hyperion, a reality-traveling threat who destroyed entire worlds and their most powerful heroes before making his way into the main Marvel universe. But King Hyperion didn't stand a hope in hell against the Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel Adam Brashear is one of the best Marvel superheroes, one of my favorites, and one of the absolutely undefeatable. He's taken on all the Avengers' entire alien armadas, he has lifted a meteor the size of Arkansas and guided it away, and he's uppercutted the hell out of the Ultimate Universe Hulk. Hyperion says he's defeated Blue Marvels before, but he hasn't faced Earth 616's. While he put Blue Marvel down initially, when Hyperion threatened the innocent bystanders nearby, Blue Marvel found a new strength. Letting loose in a way he hadn't before, it took 5 blows before Hyperion was out cold and Blue Marvel stood over him victorious. Number 9, Thor and Hyperion. With the end of the multiverse staring down the heroes of the 616 Marvel Universe across the Jonathan Hickman run on Avengers and New Avengers, Thor and a handful of other heroes like Hyperion, Starbrand, Nightmask, Ex Nihilo, and Abyss ventured across the multiverse to confront the Beyonders, responsible for the collapse of the Marvel multiverse. Now, wielding the hammer of Thor, that's with 2 R's, which can only be used by those that are considered unworthy, Thor went into battle alongside the others, giving everything he had and helping bring down just 2 of the Beyonders at the cost of his arm in New Avengers number 32. Now, after facing just 2 of the Beyonders, only Thor and Hyperion survived the battle. Unfortunately, that battle ended just for another to begin, as an entire army of Beyonders descended upon them. In one of the most badass moments in Marvel Comics, realizing that Thor can no longer wield Thor with 2R's hammer because he has proven himself worthy once again, Thor and Hyperion laugh together and race each other to Valhalla as they throw themselves into this one final battle against an enemy that they have no hope of defeating. Number 8. Monica Rambeau. Monica Rambeau is an insanely powerful cosmic hero, and being one of the heroes to hold the title of Captain Marvel, we would expect no less. Way back in Avengers number 248, a battle was taking place between the Avengers and various Olympians. One of the main fights taking place was between Zeus, a sky father on par with Odin himself, and the god of thunder himself, Thor. Now, to be quite frank, Zeus thrashed Thor like he was a badly behaved little boy. Zeus had Thor down and is about to literally wipe him from this plane of existence when out of nowhere, Monica Rambeau shows up. Shooting Zeus with a little blast of energy that cuts his arm, she orders him to back off of Thor or she will do much worse. Now Zeus, obviously not seeing her as a threat, fires off a lightning bolt that simply phases right through her living light body, doing absolutely nothing to her. So, in retaliation, she tells him the gloves are off and flies in, hitting Zeus with a blast that lights up the entirety of Olympus. And while Zeus was not defeated, Thor makes note of the fact that Monica hurt him more than any mortal had ever done before, and it shows. Number 7. Silver Surfer. The Silver Surfer is easily one of the strongest of Marvel's cosmic heroes. He can do some absolutely insane things, and he has had some massively impressive fights. But one of the ones that I think shows just how powerful he is would be his first ever fight against Null, the symbiote god. At the start of 2018's Guardians of the Galaxy series by Donny Cates and Jeff Shaw, the Silver Surfer was swallowed in a black hole that transported him billions of years into the past, landing him in Silver Surfer Black. At the beginning of time, Silver Surfer faced Null in battle when the symbiote god was just beginning to rise in power, and it was one hell of a fight. Null proved to be an extremely difficult opponent, which we know he is from his fight against literally all of Earth's heroes. Silver Surfer was going to the extent of his power trying to defeat Null in combat, and Null is still getting the best of him using All Black the Necro Sword and his other symbiotes. With Surfer on the ropes facing off against the God of Darkness, he uses the last little bits of his power cosmic that he has to create an entirely new sun point blank in front of Null's creepy little face. While he knows it doesn't defeat Null permanently, it does defeat him for the time being, and it's just super awesome. Number 6. Superman. In Superman number 127, we are introduced to Titano the Super Ape. Now he started off as a smart ape named Toto that was sent into space, but then was accidentally exposed to radiation from 2 colliding meteors. Now this, for some reason, grew Toto into a massive King Kong style ape who is now named Titano, and it also gave Titano the ability to fire rays of green kryptonite out of his eyes. I don't know. Obviously that is a big problem for Superman, who couldn't really get in close to this super cryptovision ape. But luckily, Superman's girlfriend is able to trick Titano into wearing lead sunglasses that stop the kryptonite rays, at which point Superman just picked up the giant super ape and threw him back through time. Superman chucked his super monkey through time back to the prehistoric era where he could interact with dinosaurs. Yes, Superman is so strong that he can literally throw things through time. He's also thrown Jimmy Olsen through time before, but who cares? This is a giant ape. Number 5. Franklin Richards. While he may not be considered entirely a cosmic level superhero, Franklin Richards, the son of Reed Richards and Sue Storm, is destined to become a key factor in the cosmic landscape of the Marvel Universe. His power to warp reality is so great that he has created entire pocket universes. Now in one reality, appearing in Fantastic Four Volume 1 number 604, Franklin appeared as an adult, and we saw a glimpse of just how powerful he can be. In the story, a grown Franklin and Valeria Richards worked together with their grandfather Nathaniel Richards to travel into the past to influence their younger counterparts and to help fight against the Mad Celestials that were threatening the entire world. Galactus was called on by the Fantastic Four to help, and although he brought down one Celestial, the others combined their power and were too much for Galactus to handle. Enter Franklin. Restoring Galactus and imbuing him with enough cosmic energy to stand up to the Celestials, Franklin turned Galactus into his own herald, defeating the Celestials and then being humble enough to give up that power after the fight was over. All the other heroes could do was just look up into the sky and watch in awe. It was actually kinda epic. Number 4. John Stewart Green Lantern. A Green Lantern's power ring is capable of almost anything, but even it has its limits. However, that didn't stop John Stewart from attempting to recreate an entire solar system in Green Lantern number 26. When reflecting on the destruction of the planet Zanshi and its solar system, which is an event that John blames himself for, the hero tried his damnedest to try and bring the world back with just his ring. He broke past the programming of his ring and got pretty damn close to completely rebuilding the entire solar system. Unfortunately, such a construct was too much even with John's iron will, but the fact that he got so close shows how far a power ring can really go when effort is put into it. But let's try one even more than that, shall we? Yeah. Number 3. Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan was possibly the greatest Green Lantern ever, according to the comics at least. But in the 90s, that kinda changed. After the death of Superman and the subsequent reign of the Supermen, Coast City, Hal Jordan's home, was destroyed. This completely changed the Lantern, and he completely broke the programming of his own power ring to revive the city. He created the entire city's layout with all of its buildings, parks, streets, everything. But it wasn't quite right. It wasn't the same. It needed life. So Hal went completely against the Green Lantern's rules and made constructs of all the once living inhabitants of Coast City, millions of people. When the Guardians of the Universe tried to stop him, he completely snapped. He went off the handle, ending the lives of every Green Lantern and naming himself Parallax. Hal became a threat to the whole DC universe for like a decade before eventually sacrificing himself. Sure, he went bad, but he absolutely did not hold back against anyone. Number 2. Orion. Orion is a new god and the son of Darkseid, and as a hero with a dark ancestry, he is quite the conflicted do-gooder. He has many forms and he has many abilities. He exists beyond the normal multiverse on a higher plane called the Sphere of the Gods. Born on Apocalypse but adopted by the gods of New Genesis, Orion is in a constant war with his inner darkness and with his father, Darkseid. Orion is repeatedly praised and stated to be a warrior with skill and ferocity second to none, and in one of his many displays of pure power, he completely wipes out his father. When Darkseid came to Earth, heroes like the Atom and an empowered Jimmy Olsen fought him until a boom tube opened up and Orion came out. The heroes stood aside and let Orion fight Darkseid on his own, and he absolutely wrecked the guy in one slog of a fight. At the end of the fight, after beating down on Darkseid to the level of wiping out entire city blocks, Orion wiped out Darkseid by plunging his hand straight into his father's chest, grabbing his fiery heart and ripping it out clean, leaving Darkseid as a pile of charred bones. And finally, in number 1 today, the Sentry. Near the end of the Planet Hulk storyline, the shuttle the Hulk was sent to Sakaar in by the Illuminati at the beginning blows up, wiping out Hulk's new family and the lives of millions of individuals on Sakaar. This pushes the Hulk into a whole new level of anger, which is directed squarely at the Illuminati. So he headed to Earth with his war sworn. When he got to Earth, after quickly stopping at the moon to wreck Black Bolt, he headed to New York, giving the city a time limit to be evacuated, and when that time limit stopped, he defeated everyone who was left. Iron Man and the Hulkbuster, the Avengers plus their tower, the US Army, the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Juggernaut, Doctor Strange using the power of Zom, and the Ghost Rider, all while saving innocent bystanders. He then threw the Illuminati members he captured into the ring against each other, sparing them only as he sought justice, not to end lives. Well, the Illuminati had one last-ditch effort to stop the Hulk. The Sentry. Coming in against probably the only being who could take it, Sentry unleashed almost everything he had against the Hulk, leveling city blocks and causing a massive column of fire. These two went blow for blow over and over until they both used up so much energy that they reverted back to their regular human forms, with a depowered Bruce Banner getting in a final punch to bring Sentry down.
Number 10. Cyclops. While Cyclops might not be as powerful as some of the others on this list, he pretty much perfectly sums comes up the idea of a hero who has to hold back his power in order to fight. I mean, that's literally what his costume is for, really. Well, other than that sweet X-Men suit. That is just so we know what team he's fighting alongside. But when it comes to his visor, that is straight up being used to better control and restrain his powers, so that he isn't just optic blasting everyone he looks at or comes up against into next week. Additionally, Cyclops doesn't just use his visor, but also uses his gloves to do this. In his gloves are little buttons that Cyclops can basically push to control the visor, allowing him to open it more or less and change the angle at which it will emit his optic blasts. This is also why Cyclops is known as a master of trigonometry. He needs this knowledge so that he can best utilize his optic blasts, knowing exactly how and when to fire them, and with how much intensity in order to achieve whatever the fight calls for. So whether it's a giant full frontal blast or something a little bit more subtle, Cyclops is always prepared for each and every occasion, as long as he has his trig knowledge intact and his visor and his gloves with him. Since the character first debuted, his powers and their immense strength are something that have also been shown as bothering and plaguing this character, with him even believing that Jean could actually never love him because of his uncontrollable optic blasts. How could she ever love me? I have to wear rose quartz glasses all the time. It's not that big of a deal, psych. Just chill. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Number 9. Starfire. Starfire is a character who is immensely powerful, and honestly, we don't talk about her enough on this channel. It's been a minute since we talked about Corey, but let's get into it. The Teen Titans in general are an immensely powerful team, and now that they're no longer teens and are fully grown adults, being known simply as the Titans, they're even more powerful than they once were. Being in control of superpowers as an adult superhero is really, I think, all about knowing when to hold back. Over time, characters have a tendency to only get more powerful and more experienced with age, and Starfire is no exception. In the comics, even pre-Flashpoint Starfire in a fight against Blackfire acknowledges that she is indeed her sister's equal in terms of her power and prowess, saying that the only reason that she has not beaten her sister is because they have never fought as equals, despite being equal to one another. And her sister responds by saying that due to Starfire's caring nature, Corey often holds back, which is basically her weakness. At least, that's how Blackfire sees it. While Blackfire might see this as a weakness, I'm sure Starfire would actually see it as a strength, as it is also what makes her a hero. Sometimes in order to be a hero, you have to know when to restrain yourself, you know what I mean? Number 8. Gentle. Gentle is such a great mutant hero, one we honestly do not talk enough about. His power is so great that it's believed using it could actually result in him losing his life. As a result, Gentle was given vibranium tattoos, which allow him to better contain and control his powers. His powers grant him augmented strength. Despite his mutant name, Gentle can actually become insanely muscular, increasing in size and mass, and we don't actually know the limits of his powers yet, which is why they're also so dangerous. Using them is also really hard on Nesno's body, which could result in his death. Gentle is a hero who, while also a citizen of Krakoa now, is also known for his Wakandan heritage, being actually part Wakandan and part Russian based on his parents' heritage. Initially, it was believed that using his power also caused him great pain and actually resulted in seizures, but we later learned that this was actually more psychological. The vibranium tattoos were therefore helpful for him in regards to using his powers, but were also helpful in the way that they seemed to help lessen his pain. Gentle was also recently a candidate for the X-Men, and one of the mutants you could vote to have elected to the team. He didn't get chosen, but I honestly hope he does get to join the main team in the future, as he's a really neat and unique hero and character. Number 7. The Flash. The Flash might seem like a weird pick for this list, especially as up to this point we've mostly been focusing on characters who have something physical or mental that forces them to hold back their power set. But with the Flash, it's actually all about how powerful he is. He is, I would say, too powerful, which is the issue, especially in regards to his ability to time travel. While Barry Allen as the Flash has traveled back in time and changed things only to learn afterwards of how this was kind of an awful mistake, upturning the entire universe as a result of the change he'd made to basically save his mother, Wally West has seemingly learned from his predecessor's mistakes. For that reason, Wally actually prefers not to get involved when it comes to time travel. He knows that to do so could possibly break the universe, and so has a tendency to be more reserved and much more careful when it comes to racing through the time stream. And even when his friend Hunter Zolomon had begged Wally to use his power to help reverse his paralysis by traveling back in time to prevent it, Wally actually refused. This is what prompted Hunter to become the villain known as Zoom, believing that Wally simply wouldn't help him because he'd just not known enough tragedy in his life, as Hunter had. Zoom believed that in order to make Wally as the Flash a better hero, he would actually have to make him suffer. Number 6. Hellstrom. Hellstrom is actually someone who is similar to another character on this list in regards to his heritage, although the other character I'm comparing him to here is actually not from Marvel, but stay tuned for more on them. Because this point is all about Damon Hellstrom, or Hellstorm, depending on his persona and his mood. Hellstrom is said to be the son of Satan, although it is unknown up to this point if his father is really the true devil or just one of the many demons posing as the devil in the Marvel Universe, including Damon's father, as well as Azazel, who is Nightcrawler's father, and Mephisto, who isn't really known for being a father, but did once have a son named Blackheart. That is a thing that happened, and Blackheart did try to usurp him, so, you know. Hellstrom, as such, has two different personas within him, one that is inherently more good and heroic, and another that is straight up or on the verge of being evil, more influenced by his father's heritage. Sometimes these two personas are kind of given different names as well, Hellstrom or Hellstorm depending on which persona he is leaning more towards at the time. Sometimes Hellstrom is actually only spelled with one L, and other times he's used these names to sort of like protect his identity, although they are both super similar, so I don't really fully understand how that's supposed to fool anyone. Hellstrom has often struggled with unleashing the full force of his power, and sometimes, in fact I would say often, regrets its ties to hell and the darkness that lies within him. Number 5. Shazam. Shazam, or Captain Marvel as some still refer to him today, is one of the most powerful heroes DC has, and in fact some would argue that when it comes to his fights and contests with Superman, it is he, not Superman, who is often the one who would need to hold back. This is because Shazam's powers come from the gods, and some actually say this is because his powers are kinda magical. The limitless wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, stamina of Atlas, power and omnipotence of Zeus, courage of Achilles, and speed of Mercury. There is really no limit, or there shouldn't be, to what he can do, and it is because of this sheer power and strength that Shazam often needs to hold back when fighting against his enemies as well. You could also add in the fact that it is Billy Batson's kind heart that often encourages him to hold back against his enemies, preferring to not be so brutal with his enemies or his opponents. I mean, especially if they are his friends or people he looks up to, because, you know, even heroes sometimes fight each other, like in a fight against Supes. At one point, Superman even played host to Captain Marvel and actually marveled at his sheer power. So, you know you're probably going to need to hold back when you're like wowing Superman with your power levels. Number 4. Blue Marvel. If you are powerful enough to knock out Hulk and live to tell the tale, even if he possibly is maybe a less stronger version of the Hulk from the Ultimate Universe, then you probably need to rein in your powers almost all the time. Blue Marvel's powers come from him being a scientist and being forever changed by an experiment gone wrong. Adam Brashear was the project lead on an experimental attempt to manipulate and utilize antimatter. When the negative reactor exploded, it transformed Adam into, in essence, what he was trying to create. He became an antimatter reactor, harnessing antimatter, which basically powered his amazing newfound abilities. Number 3. Superman. I mean, Superman is one of the strongest superheroes DC has to offer. He packs a mean punch, and I mean a mean punch. He often holds back, and not just in regards to strength and holding back actual force, but also in terms of his morality. Superman has a very strong moral code. He won't even hit someone in the back if their back is turned to him. That's how passionate he is about fighting fair. He doesn't hit his opponents when they're down, and he doesn't kill, even though he could very easily permanently defeat his opponents by just straight up ending them. This just isn't Superman's style, and honestly, it's what most people love and respect about Superman. To use his power to annihilate his opponents would actually kind of be sinking to their level. In fact, in realities where he has chosen not to hold back, like Injustice, where he brutally murders the Joker in response to him destroying Metropolis, killing his BFF Jimmy Olsen, and manipulating Superman into killing Lois, Clark becomes a straight up villain and a brutal dictator, which is why he chooses to hold back more often than not in the comics, because he is aware of how power can easily corrupt people. I mean, to be honest, a lot of his villains are people who allow themselves to become corrupted by great power, whether or not they're aware of that. Number 2. Hulk. To say that the Hulk is the strongest there is really not an overstatement. Not only the strongest, but also just one of the most indestructible heroes out there. After all, Hulk is also now immortal, and kinda has been the whole time. And as a result of this, is a character that you do not want to face in a fight. The good news is that Hulk typically doesn't want to kill people, and so he generally does hold back in fights, unless he's going up against someone, that's just about as indestructible as he is. Like, he might not hold back as much when he's fighting someone like the Thing. There are a few reasons that this happens when it comes to Hulk holding back. One, Hulk has actually exhibited he himself has morals. Not all Hulk personas are like this. I mean, look at his alternate version, Maestro, from the future. This version of the Hulk is more devoid of morals and is therefore willing to use all of his strength and power to devastating degrees. The other reason Hulk is often holding back actually has to do with the other persona that's in there with him at the time, Bruce Banner. It's been alluded to before that Bruce can act at times like the Hulk's conscience, but then again, it's also been suggested that Hulk actually might be Bruce's conscience, so kinda depends on the story you're reading as to who is the more heroic between those two personas. Number 1. Raven. Raven is another character that basically sums up the idea of a person who has to hold back and really has no choice in that matter. I mean, we've seen what happens when Raven fully lets go, and it's deadly. Raven in general has to hold back her power in regards to letting herself be fueled by emotion, which is why she generally remains extremely detached. Which also makes her a great counterbalance to someone like Starfire on the Teen Titans team. While Starfire's issue when it comes to holding back is that she has too much emotion, too much empathy for those around her, Raven often prefers to stay closed off from those emotions, knowing that with them could come great power, but at the risk of easily losing control. This is a huge issue for Raven considering her heritage. Raven is related to the demon Trigon, who is immensely powerful and is a version of Satan in essence in the DC universe. While Trigon is her father, he is also her arch nemesis, which means she has to be careful when it comes to possibly opening herself up to his influence at all, as it can and has in the past turned Raven into an extremely dangerous and powerful supervillain. One that could literally end worlds, so yeah.
At number 10, it was just an accident. In one event, Spider-Man accidentally caused the demise of Agent Charlemagne. She put herself in harm's way, intercepting a blow meant for Wolverine, leading to her tragic demise. This incident weighed heavily on Spider-Man's conscience, leaving a lasting impact on him. Despite encounters where he unintentionally caused demises, Charlemagne's loss affected him profoundly, marking the first time he ever felt directly responsible for taking a life. Spider-Man struggled with guilt and remorse, grappling with the weight of his actions, unable to forgive himself for what happened. This experience added a layer of complexity to his journey, highlighting the emotional toll and ethical dilemmas heroes face when confronting the consequences of their actions. At number 9 is his fight against Firelord. Firelord is a cosmic being who's held his own against some heavy hitters like Thor, the X-Men, and even went toe-to-toe with the Phoenix Force. But in one instance, he clashed with Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 270. Spider-Man had a different approach, opting to outsmart rather than overpower. He led Firelord on a wild chase through the city, trying unconventional methods to take him out, like luring him into a building set for demolition, or a gas station to explode and exploit his powers. Despite the relentless effort, none of these ploys managed to take Firelord down. The most unexpected strategy of all was simply to, well, punch him a lot. Spider-Man's persistence paid off, and through a frenzied attack, he inadvertently triumphed. So much so that the Avengers had to actually step in and intervene, pulling Spider-Man off of Firelord's body. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Back in Black story, where Spider-Man's shift back to his black costume marks a darker turn. Discovering Kingpin's role in Aunt May's assassination attempt, Peter Parker unleashes his hidden strength. He abandons his usual wit, publicly confronting and absolutely brutalizing Kingpin, revealing the immense power he often restrains against his weaker foes. Spider-Man goes as far as threatening Kingpin's life if he ever endangers the Parkers again, a stance he takes to the extreme in a separate reality explored in the What If series. This narrative showcased Spider-Man's capacity for extreme actions when pushed to his limit, emphasizing the consequences of his unparalleled strength when gone unchecked. At number 7 is the iconic Superior Spidey vs. Scorpion. During the Superior Spider-Man comic arc, where Dr. Octopus seizes control of Spider-Man's body and unleashes a devastating punch that cleanly knocks the jaw off of Scorpion. This punch, almost effortless for Peter Parker, shocks shocks Doc Ock, revealing the immense power Spider-Man had concealed this whole time. It's a stark revelation that Spider-Man had been restraining his immense strength all along. It dawns on Dr. Octopus that Peter Parker was holding back in their battles, a realization that astounds him. The notion that Spider-Man in his kindness or self-restraint had refrained from using his full force against adversaries left Doc Ock surprised at the level of power at Peter Parker's disposal. At number 6 is Morlun. In 2001's The Amazing Spider-Man, a grim brawl unfurled between Spider-Man and the villain Morlun. Unlike his usual foes, Morlun fed on spider essence, making this encounter particularly dangerous for Spidey. But aware of Morlun's weakness to radiation, Spidey weaponized his own tainted spider essence against him. Inflicting a potentially lethal dose, Spider-Man hesitated when Morlun begged for mercy, only for the villain's minion to swiftly finish him off. Though Spider-Man didn't deal the final blow here, he purposefully brought Morlun to the edge of demise. Not only did this arc introduce intriguing new powers to Spider-Man, but also showcased a darker, more ruthless side of the hero, revealing a brutal aspect of Spider-Man's character which hinted at a threshold he'd teeter on, where mercy tangled with the urge for justice. At number 5 is the Grim Hunt. In this saga, the Grim Hunt, Spider faced the Karvanoff family's wrath in their ruthless quest targeting spider-powered heroes. Unlike the typical Spider-Man tales, this story gets intense. You see, when he's pushed to his limit, he unleashes a darker side, and in a shockingly violent act, Spidey uses his unique adhesive abilities to brutally retaliate against a Karvanoff member for eliminating his clone Kane, tearing off the villain's face. Yeah, this narrative marked a departure from Spidey's usual moral code, showcasing a grittier, more aggressive side of our friendly neighborhood hero, revealing how far he'd go and push beyond his limits. At number 4, tossing tanks and trucks. In the heat of battle against Green Goblin, Ultimate Spider-Man did something extraordinary, lifting an 18-wheeler truck and bringing it down on the Green Goblin's face. At just 16, Peter showcased incredible strength, proving that age is no limit to powers. Later, facing the Absorbing Man, Spider-Man intercepted a hurled truck, showcasing his swift reflexes and superhuman strength by stopping an entire armored vehicle mid-air. Even when facing tanks and mercenaries, Spidey didn't hold back. In a high-stakes rescue mission, he hoisted a tank above his head and smashed it down. While Spider-Man's usual strength hovers around 20 tons, moments like these reveal his ability to push beyond that, especially when lives are on the line. At number 3, benching entire buildings. In Spider-Man Final Chapter, he's holding up the entire Daily Bugle, not for himself, but for everybody else's safety. And that's no easy feat too, especially when the city he's trying to protect starts turning against him. Plus, Aunt May's on a ticking time bomb, and so talk about the pressure. Here's the thing about Spidey, even when the world is on his shoulders, he doesn't buckle. He pushes through, stops that bomb, and keeps the Bugle from becoming a pile of rubble. In a separate issue, Dr. Kirk Connors aimed to use a contraption within New York's sewers to rid himself of the reptilian transformation. However, unbeknownst to him, a lethal trap awaited beneath Penn Station. As Spider-Man attempted to reason with the lizard, chaos ensued. Consumed by his primal instincts, the lizard brought Penn Station crashing down, burying Spider-Man under its colossal weight. Aware that even the mighty Thor would falter beneath such an overwhelming burden, Peter grappled with the weight, his muscles straining against the impossible load. Yet against all odds, determination surged within him, a testament to his unwavering resolve. He defied the impossible, summoning the strength to lift the collapsed station, liberating himself from the wreckage's grasp. And lastly in this entry is in If This Be My Destiny, Spider-Man faced a monumental challenge, an entire underwater facility collapsing atop of him. Weakened by a prior fight, he struggled immensely, unable to lift the colossal weight off of himself, submerged underwater. Faced with Aunt May's life on the line, Spider-Man almost gave up before remembering how he failed to save his Uncle Ben. Unwilling to let it happen again with Aunt May, Peter resolves to fight on and lifts the giant mechanism to free himself, summoning every ounce of strength to hoist the structure, facing excruciating pain in the process. At number 2 is Juggernaut. In the showdown titled Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, Spider-Man faced a real tough time. It was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. You see, nothing Spidey tried seemed to make a dent in stopping that big tough dude. The Juggernaut's on a mission to nab Madame Web, thinking that her powers will give him an edge against the X-Men. But Web gets the heads up and rings Spidey for help. The thing is, it's not smooth sailing. Spider-Man tries all of his moves, but nothing sticks. The Juggernaut is just too strong and relentless. He gets dangerously close to taking Madame Web out for good, and that's when Spider-Man goes all in. He doesn't hold back anymore. Leading the Juggernaut to a construction zone, he cooks up a plan and then bam, traps him in wet cement. Goes to show that sometimes it's not about brute strength, but about how smart and persistent you are. And in that moment, Spidey proved that determination determination and quick thinking can win even the toughest battles. And at number 1 is his fight against Green Goblin. When Spider-Man faced a devastating loss of Gwen Stacy, he vowed revenge against the Green Goblin. Fueled by emotions, Spidey nearly succumbs to the urge and ends the villain's life, thrashing him around with a barrage of punches. Yet amidst the chaos, he pauses, realizing his core principles. Spidey refuses to compromise his heroism by resorting to unaliving. Despite the intense desire for justice, Spider-Man confronts the Goblin, opting to defeat rather than execute. Unfortunately, Goblin had other plans concerning his glider, and I'm pretty sure we all know the rest. Spider-Man, relying on his heightened senses, narrowly avoids a fatal blow from the villain's glider, ending Green Goblin's reign without compromising his own moral code.
The inciting incident for why Peter goes off the deep end is covered in the first part of the story, and the rest is simply about what happens as a result, with Peter even returning to his black costume in the end. Not the symbiote one, just borrowing the look of that costume to reflect the fact that all color and witty quips has left him, and his approach to crime fighting. Peter, MJ, and Aunt May are all outside reminiscing about Uncle Ben, when suddenly Aunt May is shot. MJ calls 911, and Peter frantically looks around to see if he can spot a shooter, but realizing that the clock is ticking and there isn't even enough time for them to wait for an ambulance for May, Peter, without his costume on, swings his way through the city and delivers her to the hospital. Meanwhile, in prison, the Kingpin receives a cryptic message from a police officer and shares his favorite quote that Euripides from the play Medea speaks. Whom the gods would destroy, they first drive mad. Peter sets out to find out who has done this to Aunt May, mainly blaming himself though, as Peter usually does. However, here he maybe has a little bit of a reason to do that. This is because this storyline takes place after the events of the first Civil War. Now, during the first Civil War, Peter was convinced by Tony Stark's Iron Man, whom he was aligned with at the start of that event, publicly unmasked to promote the Superhero Registration Act. Peter does this, but later decides that Tony is actually in the wrong and allies himself instead with Captain America, which means since his identity as Spider-Man is public, that he and his family are constantly on the run, hopping from motel to motel. If he had never unmasked, he figures, Aunt May would have never been targeted. Probably true. Before he leaves MJ and Aunt May, he urges MJ to check Aunt May in under her maiden name, Riley, in order to protect her from further attacks. Peter returns to investigate and finds a police officer at the shooter's perch with a sniper rifle and scope nearby. He webs up the officer and basically leaves him there, just taking the scope with him, on the trail of who supplied the weapon. He finds an illegal weapon sale going on and he breaks it up, still in his civilian clothing. When Peter interrogates one of the men involved and he hesitates to give Peter the answer Peter's looking for, Peter breaks his hand. Back at the hospital, MJ visits Aunt May, whose status is critical. The doctors tell MJ that May is in a coma and that due to her old age, she is struggling to heal even with the help of the machines they have her hooked up to. As a result, they are almost certain that she won't make it. Peter swings his way up to the top of a tall building to retrieve something. This item is all webbed up, but he undoes the webbing to reveal his cloth black suit the Black Cat made for him, which he initially stopped wearing because he felt it sent the wrong message. He once again dons this suit, as I said earlier, and vows not to rest until he kills the person who is responsible for the attack on Aunt May, and finally get his revenge. In his hunt to track down Aunt May's shooter, he learns that Jake Martino was the one who purchased the specific scope he found at the scene of the crime. He discovers this after throwing one of the arms dealers that he's questioning out of a window, catching him at the last second with a thread of webbing, prompting the man to reveal the buyer as Jake. Initially, this guy didn't want to answer his questions, but you know, throw someone out a window, all of a sudden they're changing their tune. Peter then tracks Jake down and beats him brutally, even breaking his arm. Right when Jake is about to name who hired him, however, he is shot in the chest. The person who shot Jake gets away, but Peter manages to at least hit him with a spider tracer. An ambulance arrives to take Jake to the hospital and Spider-Man goes along with him. But unfortunately, Jake dies before he can answer the question he was about to answer before he was tragically shot in the chest. Once at the hospital, Peter runs into MJ, who passes on the tragic news that the doctors gave her. May is not going to make it. Heading back out, Spider-Man tracks down the shooter who got away just as he's on the phone with someone. Peter webs up his mouth and listens to who is on the other end, hearing the voice of Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. Fisk then asks Peter what he can do for him, and Peter responds that, well, Fisk can die. After learning who was on the phone, Peter questions the shooter, who we learn is named Jim. He finds out that Jake was actually hired to shoot Peter. not May. Spider-Man then asks why Jim shot Jake, and the man simply says that he knew something that Wilson Fisk didn't, but as to what, he doesn't know. That's all he knows. Meanwhile, back in prison, Fisk is approached by the same police officer as before. This time, Fisk has a favor to ask of him. The police officer says he'll do whatever Fisk asks as long as it doesn't break the rules. Wilson Fisk responds by saying what he is asking is beyond the rules, then smashes to pieces the desk he has in the cell and reveals that it is filled with millions of dollars in cash. He tells the officer to divide the money amongst the officers in the prison. The officer frees Fisk, and Wilson asks him to bring Fisk his usual attire. Peter takes Jim down to the sewers and ties him up, leaving him to the mercy of the rats. As Peter talks about the food chain threatening Jim, Jim becomes scared and pleads with Spider-Man, saying he'll do anything he wants. Spider-Man sees that Jim was really just another victim of Kingpin and decides not to kill him, but does tell Jim to spread the word amongst his friends to leave him and his family alone, or else. Then he leaves, heading back to the hospital to pay May another visit. Hoping that his healing factor will help her, he gives her some of his own blood via a transfusion. Finally knowing who is behind the hit, he heads to the prison in his black suit to finally confront the Kingpin. Upon breaking into the prison, Peter finds Wilson surrounded by other inmates. He and Fisk fight, and Kingpin taunts him for believing in the greater good. This pushes Spider-Man to a breaking point, and he beats Fisk to within an inch of his life. He says that while Spider-Man will not kill him, Peter will. Unmasking, Peter taunts and torments Fisk, saying how easy it would be with his super strength to crush Fisk, and even threatening to suffocate Fisk by shooting his webbing up Fisk's nostrils. Eventually, Kingpin shouts at Peter that if he really is going to kill him, then he should just do it now and be done with it. However, Peter responds that he won't kill him. At least not yet. He says he has done one better by defeating him and proving in front of all the other inmates at the prison how weak Wilson Fisk is. He warns everyone in the prison that if any of them ever come for him or his family, they will end up like Fisk. And he also says that Kingpin's life is now tied to May's. If she dies, then Peter will return and finish the job. Peter then leaves the prison. A defeated Kingpin and all the inmates slowly and solemnly return to their cells. Following the confrontation, Peter and MJ are forced to confront the fact that while the hospital Peter brought her to is the best, they can't really afford to keep May there. They've been paying exclusively in cash, and it's only a matter of time before someone becomes suspicious. However, Peter is distraught at the thought of moving May, so MJ agrees that they can wait a little bit longer. Peter stays up all night talking to Aunt May, hoping she'll wake up and respond, but she never does. When he steals one of her blood work reports, he learns that his blood transfusion has basically made no difference. May isn't getting better. At this point, the police show up to ask some questions. Peter senses they are in trouble with his spider sense tingling, and he is able to hide, turn off the lights, and incapacitate the officer so he, MJ, and May can escape. They illegally transport May to a new, more affordable hospital in order to protect all of their identities. This really was one of Peter's darkest eras, to be honest. Even by the end of this story, we're left with a pretty bleak resolution. May is still in the hospital, she's still on her deathbed, no longer even getting the best care possible, and Peter and MJ are both still on the run as Peter is still technically a fugitive, being hunted down by S.H.I.E.L.D. for being anti-registration. At the end of the story, Peter reflects on just how low he has fallen, acknowledging that he has committed at least 9 felonies during these events. And what's worse, his fingerprints are basically everywhere, so he could very well be arrested and convicted for these crimes. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it. In case you also wanted to give this story a read as it was written, you can check it out in the J. Michael Straczynski and Ron Garney run of The Amazing Spider-Man from issues 539 to 543, or you can just grab a trade paperback collection of the story, which is titled Back in Black, from your local library or your local comic shop. I definitely recommend giving it a read if you enjoyed our summary here. Although maybe just read it by itself, as following this Spider-Man storyline came the dreaded One More Day.